Christmas times. Okay, so welcome. This is our just calculating where we are at time and space, but this is our fourth week of 2 months. I think we've been journeying together soon, so we have one more to go with this form. And yeah, today in the call would be amazing. I wrote in the group too something about kind of mapping our own brains around the whole world of facilitation. So let me make Johanna co-host. Yeah, okay. Yes. So it's a really kind of wide topic, and idea is that we would look at today more closer and tighter and start opening up and chewing up even the word. What does it mean, facilitation or holding space, and what are different aspects to it? Also, what kind of different perspectives we can look at it, and we can all kind of chew and bounce it together. Also, what it means to us. Maybe some of you had time to kind of chew it. I was talking about mapping it out, because there might be many of us are holding space already in different ways, and everything that is kind of like, oh, sorry, something there. Yeah, everything that is linked to this whole world. Like, what does it mean that I'm holding space first and foremost for myself, and then others? So what are all the aspects there? Like, what do I even put into that palette or puzzle or bulk of things that when I start sharing, holding space, facilitating, what's there? So I would be happy to maybe reflect from my perspective, which is only one way of looking at it. And then we have Johanna today here in the call from Finland, and she's been starting to hold more like a theme-based facilitation and spaces in Finland, and also did her first training a few weeks ago or last week. So kind of what does it mean then from facilitating the energetical process and sessions or space to others and ourselves to go more into holding space and facilitate the knowledge part and the themes and the information, and that's quite core what also we are sharing, and kind of our intentions in this group process. That what does it mean that when we are in a learning process, and then we can start also sharing the knowledge from ourselves and from the theories, and kind of more scientific, and looking at the structure of the process with others as a learning process, but also like how do we facilitate those things. So felt would be valuable to hear real life process about it, and Johanna can share about it later. And yeah, we have Fanny here. She's helping to hold the space, and all of us have for sure already experience about it. So it would be nice to start putting also our thoughts and minds and questions together around the theme. We've been looking a lot already about music, sound, playlisting. How do we go into the co-creation and that part of holding space, and holding that container and room for this type of processes to happen, and for inner dance. So we will not touch upon that today, because there is been a lot of focus, and there will be also. So I would love us to watch more. Now first just map out what else is there when it comes to holding space. So I did some of my own mappings, and it's just like to try to even put my own brain out there. Like, so what do I feel that in this past 8 years or so, when I've been more looking at inner dance and this type of processes and the facilitation, what's there for me to what's been my learning process, and what is there to look at, and what are the areas for myself. And before going to that, I would like to kind of even look at the word or kind of a role, and what does it mean to facilitate. And where I'm coming from is more like organization culture, and from my previous work as a coordinator and kind of producer, being in an NGO world and organization culture, like when I studied facilitation there, it kind of changed my whole world of thinking. How are we in a group process, and how are we involved together in a space? So I would like to look at that first. The word facilitation, now I'm putting my NGO kind of work organizational perspectives on when I'm speaking about facilitation. It's coming from the word facil. It's a Latin word, so it means like easiness. How do we make things easy? So facilitation as a word is already looking at how do we easy up things. And when it comes to working with groups and organizations and those kind of situations, there's quite strong culture amongst people when we form or do work in a company or any setup, that there's like a leadership model. There's someone who's a boss, someone who decides, someone kind of is expert or specialist, and then then many decision making processes and planning processes comes from that space where someone has been a leader. Also, like societal structures are a lot of based on that leadership models since long time. So when in the organization world there started to be more and more talks and trainings and world of facilitation, it came kind of, I felt hand in hand with more like an innovation startup world also, and where entrepreneurship and collaboration started to emerge. And there was something I feel that needed to break. We've been talking, and it's been quite core process in me in inner dance to look at power structures and hierarchies, and how kind of in also in this kind of I use the word spiritual world, but in these practices that the structure has been quite hierarchical and leadership based, also not so much group based or like kind of a community tribalism, also that, but from my world, so from my Western Finnish city eyeglasses now, where I'm speaking from. So leadership and systems and hierarchies been there. So when facilitation started to kind of spark and come to the space, I had my first experience with one really close Swedish facilitator friend who is very kind of top in it, where when I went to his workshops and spaces and planning spaces, suddenly his role was to just bring things out from me and from the group members, and I hadn't experienced that kind of feeling where someone just actually uses all their skills and techniques and tools and times to bring out the knowledge from the participants, because my structure came from school and authority and teachers and having a team leader or a boss or someone who knows better, the specialist in the workplace. So I got really, it was kind of a, how would I say, life-changing moment for me then to go to facilitation training that time and start to look at how when I'm working as a coordinator or project manager or kind of leading my own area, when my perspective of holding that space for, or it can be usually like planning processes, idea development, innovation, like challenges, if there's challenges in this space or group, or how do we develop certain areas. So what it had to like have a change and shift of role in myself, that when I come from that I know the best in decision making process, for example, because I've studied this, or I know about this, or this is my profession. And now this person who is a graphic designer knows best because it's their profession. And now this person who's a teacher knows the best because it's their profession. So they should decide or lead when it comes to this area. So suddenly there was like a group space and someone was a facilitator. So someone was taking a role where she or he doesn't influence what comes up from the group space, but actually uses tools and skills to bring the knowledge out from many brains in the space. And in a kind of organizational or societal way, it's been actually like huge shift from from this perspective that one person knows the best and decides because they have a status or title of a boss or a leader, to come into a space where actually all of us know something, and now we do a kind of group process or techniques to bring the knowledge out from the group, to bring decision making out from the group space. So I dived into that world quite deeply, and I felt it's like a groundbreaking what was happening. So many startups use this, like this kind of innovation world was using. Everyone was like using someone, top facilitators, to come into their organizations to lead meetings, for example, to have like a different approaches, and it started to look like that success stories are actually coming from there. So succeeding in our organizational culture started to come from more group mind and group process than from leadership models. So it was breaking already in organizations like and in companies like this authority. So from that world where there's actually a profession in called facilitation or facilitator, and they have different skills, different roles, but it's actually like a thing to be a person who is not involved in the actual outcomes or the process, but is the one taking a role to bring out the knowledge from a group. When I then started to reflect that to inner dance and yoga world and whatever I was kind of a teacher or teaching or sharing, there was like I could implement a lot of that thing that then in myself there needs to be a different mindset when I'm in the space and with the group. And how am I also always part of the process? So if we think about session, I am part of, for sure. We are all linked. It's a collective process. So we're not out of the process that is happening in the room or what's happening with someone in a one-on-one situation or what's happening in our families or any groups we are around. So I'm part of the process, but at the same time, I'm saying I'm a facilitator. I'm creating these conditions. I'm holding space. I'm inviting people to come to the space. So I do also hold that role where I'm not part of it at the same time. So I'm creating these conditions in this space that the knowledge and the information and the insights, for example, or we can call the healing happens in itself from the space. And insights are coming from the space. I'm not the one who is giving them. So my perspective from being, for example, a yoga teacher as a sideline evening job or weekends, or a body therapist, or then also like inner dance facilitator did have a role or status. Started to study and look at it. What does it mean then to hold space? What does it mean that I'm part of this and holding space and conducting something with the form, but not putting importance that I'm there and I'm the one holding it. So kind of looking at this process of importance of, so for example, we have been doing self journeys. So we lie down, we go into the process ourselves. For some people, that's very deep, very powerful. Things happen, we get insights. For some people, it's not really, nothing happens. I don't know, I cannot surrender, I cannot like trust the space by myself. And then sometimes for those people, it's very, very powerful. I mean powerful, that they feel something deeper, or it's easier to surrender, happens with someone else being in the space. And then third aspect, for some people, when being in a group space, that's actually again something more powerful. And opposite, for some people, being one-on-one with someone in the process is very difficult, it's very intimate. I cannot surrender, I cannot go into my own process really, because there's only one person watching at me, and that's for sure my process. And then in a group space can be very difficult to let go and surrender and allow myself to dive in the process. So actually it's easier for me by myself. So we are all very different. So then looking at, okay, first of all, what is facilitation? Because also from my point of view, we are, and like we can and we are facilitating ourselves. When we are in a process, we can start observing to hold space for ourselves and create those conditions in our own space. And then when we are in inner dance process, we think and see like we are awake, but we are also going to the deep dream states and the deep processes, but we are able to observe it. So when the observer is awake and alive there, for me, that for myself, for me, that would be like the facilitator. Okay, I'm observing what's happening in my field. So in the process, when I'm by myself, I'm also able to decide and guide myself, or feel like, oh, this is okay, I actually don't want to go there. Oh, I just went there. Or I can touch myself to help to release something if I feel stiffness, or I can just let it be and see what happens without actually interfering. So I'm doing decisions in my own process. Oh, I feel like moving. Should I move or not? The observer is kind of doing those steps and decisions, or the movement just happens and the observer doesn't have anything to say. So if I'm aware and I'm kind of observing and in that awake state, but also going into those deep processes and realms, I would say in myself, I feel that's the facilitator that is alive there, that awake observer me. So then I'm facilitating, and that's something we can also practice and kind of be aware that we can actually do it. And we are probably also doing it. So instead of taking like a feeling or perspective or paradigm that something takes over me and I'm not in control, we have that part that is witnessing and observing. So we are able to actually influence also our process. So I would say that's my self facilitation in a way. Then facilitating others, then looking at those things, is it needed? If the self process is also, we are getting a lot of feedback the past few years when people are self journeying, how deep they go. So why and is it needed then to process and go into inner dance with other people, which would be then that maybe the other person can say, I'm facilitating you, or I'm facilitating a group. At the same time, what happens, we are facilitating each other. in the space. So these could be like different perspectives to maybe chew and watch the theme of facilitation, where there's not a one way, doesn't mean a one thing. And the facilitation doesn't happen in one directionality either in the space, that I would be only the one influencing the other person. So yeah, that would be kind of my bridge to look at the meaning of it, and then what is there what is in there in a group process, and what is there in one-on-one process. What are the tools? So that's why I actually like the librarian work, that we could see and map out in ourselves, like what are the tools, what are the skills, what are the gifts, what are the experiences in our lives that all will kind of be our palette where we start working from, and it's a very different for all of us. So why we don't give a manual and say step by step 1 to 10, this is how you do it, because all of our libraries and skills and toolset will be totally different. And so how in this journey and training we can then support that process where all of us are finding our own, but also sharing some different aspects that are very common that happens in facilitation. But that would be like where we can start. So also question wise, there's kind of never one right question to the facilitation topics in my experience, but it's very rich to hear and see and witness different types of systems. So we all have our own system and own way and style. So the biggest gifts for myself has been to witness other people doing things in totally opposite way, using totally different facilitation techniques or styles or things, and it's confusing. It's not easy to suddenly, like, also to accept that, oh, that person is facilitating by doing this weirdest thing that I'm witnessing right now, and I don't know what that is, what that's doing in the space. But by being exposed to so many different types of personalities and facilitators, is the kind of biodiversity that I think is the biggest gift in an inner dance community. But there's not a one style or a one role model who would say, or a person who would say, this is how you should do it. Because then we go to the core, I think, of the whole, also the self journey, that we have all the answers. We actually have all the skills and the tools. So what's the remembrance process? How do we remember to also share certain things, and freedom and free space, and allow others to be in that space with us, which is a very intimate and vulnerable space for many. How do we hold that space for ourselves, but also then, if we feel called to it, and I would kind of say we are already doing it, all of us, one way or another. Even if we have one dog or a cat in the house, we're probably facilitating them, or our neighbor, or anyone around us, because the shifts and the movements in ourselves when we are already inner dancing is already happening outside of us also. So already we are facilitating everything around us through our own process. But then we start from there slowly. So for some of us, facilitation can mean, how do I hold space for my child, for my mother, for myself first and foremost, but then can start from things around us, for my pet, for my neighbor, for my colleague. What's holding space for that person through the perspective of inner dance, and the things we've already learned from our own journeys, and witnessing, and what we are learning in this group process right now, what we are learning from the theory, that's like the first opening. How do I see that I'm actually already holding space and facilitating and being also held by others, where inner dance is not a separate workshop in life. So what are our like really close surroundings? Then from there, intentionally, if I want to invite people to share this process that I've gone through and it's very meaningful for me and opening, and I invite them to the space, or I notice that someone is actually asking that from me. It can be one person or many people, group process or individual. When I set up the space, what are the elements there? So all of this is facilitation. For me, having a talk with one of our team members here, where my observer and awareness or the experience through also inner dance has shaped something in me, how I can hold the space for that person. For example, in a conflict situation, or when a child is getting the like worst, craziest tantrum in the middle of the shopping mall. Okay, so how do I hold space from inner dance perspective and what I've been experienced? Am I like shutting them down, staying quiet? Am I getting angry? Am I allowing and just saying them, yeah, amazing, I don't care, we're in a public space, please let out your emotions or feelings, and this is a good process, go. Even encourage them to do it. So we can have already like very different type of okay, ways of facilitating real life situations. So yeah, those would be kind of my mappings of what can be, for example, the areas where we are already facilitating and what we can consciously look at as facilitation or holding space, through the kind of inner dance perspectives. And then when it comes to very kind of practical set of tools, I mapped out, I can just share where it was like really rough first, like, okay, so for myself, how would I map out, or when I'm in that process of facilitating, what's there. So I was looking at, well, the first and foremost for me is kind of, well, maybe presence, like how am I in the space when I open up that space also for others. So what's my own kind of presence, or you can call it energy, or we can also look at how am I in this space right now. Then there's touch and like physicality. So if, yeah, for me that's a very big tool because I have a long history with it, but it's also something that I do in a daily basis too, and like consciously, that when I touch people or even say hi or hug, so that's already like a way of communicating and connecting and finding resonance, and when we even feel like, is it allowed or not, or should I hug this person or not? So touch is a big topic in my own world of space holding. Sound, and into the sound world I would put the playlist can be looked at the whole journey of the space, where everything is included, including like our presence and touch, but yeah, playlist and the creation of playlist because we're creating sounds, but sound as a theme came to me because looking at the playlist being maybe in the space or instruments or other sounds that comes from the other people who are in the process. So all kinds of sounds are one way, part of the facilitation. And then what sounds do I intentionally create? Speaking is part of them, but I actually put it in another bubble in my mind map. But of course, if we speak in the room or in the process to someone, it's also a sound, but it then starts to create meanings too. So then speaking would be one, words, are much related to how I open the space, how I close the space. If I'm the one who is kind of coordinating, space holding, conducting the space where the inner dance can happen. Also, of course, if it's a spontaneous situation with my child who is screaming in the shopping mall, what words do I use? How do I speak to it? What's my presence with the child? How do I touch them or not? Do I observe if they need to actually be alone, or do I hug them, or do I hit them, or do I punish them? Like, what is my reaction with touch and presence and sound in that space already? But in a kind of workshop or creating space for that process, I would look at words during the process, opening the space, maybe with some words and speaking. Also, that's very linked to my presence. How do I speak? What is my speed? What is my tone? Am I relaxed? Am I coming from a very stressful moment? And like all of those will affect kind of and facilitate the group space already. How much I speak, how much I don't speak at all. Should I speak or should I not speak? How much I let other people to speak in the space, like beginning, in the end, that also facilitates the space. And then during the process, if it's a group process, for example, do I speak to one person's body? Do I speak to the whole room? Do I speak some words that comes or things that comes to my field as a facilitator through the whole room, but I'm actually speaking to one body? or do I speak overall some themes that comes up? And all those are also facilitating the space, holding the space, and then ending. How would I speak? What kind of words would I use to collect insights, to collect connections? How much others can share and speak? Then would I integrate and bridge things in the end of the workshops by speaking? So yeah, speaking and words would be one of my mind mapping bubble when it comes to the art of facilitation. And then the actual space was kind of one that I was looking at, because yeah, for example, myself, it's very hard to, I'm kind of private, or even a hermit, or kind of a very Finnish person from Finland who is used to like privacy and space and forest, and like there's a lot of personal space. So when I then have been creating spaces for inner dance processes, because of my own perception, I felt that I need very private space for that. Like even a studio, I felt like, okay, there shouldn't be anyone in the building or in the next rooms. And this was kind of the first years also when I felt more private about it, or if I lay down in my own process, if I have a roommate or a family member in the next room, that's also affecting like how do I facilitate or what's happening in my process. So space in that way can be, yeah, where if we plan it and invite people, where is the space? Then whatever space is it, how do we create it? What are the things that we feel that are like there? It's a lot of like physicalities can be also, do we use mattresses, pillows, yes or no? What are the benefits of certain elements in the room? Do I use smells? Are there some smells that are actually like all is facilitating, affecting? Are they what are they doing? And are they triggering someone? Are they creating a migraine to some person and some not? Are they actually opening some person? What moment I would use different elements to create that space in the room? What else is there which brings meanings to people? If I put all my ancestral religious objects and everything in the space, how do those things facilitate people if there's whatever can be in a room or a space. So that's kind of one aspect, that when I arrive to that space where I feel, okay, I'm invited to inner dance process, how does that whole space already affect like my feeling of surrender or diving into it? And as space holders, we can create those and look at those acts. And again, there's not a one way to create that space. So yeah, touch, presence, speech, words, sounds, the room. And I'd love to hear from you guys. What else do you might have mapped out there? Okay, maybe we could do that before I continue talking. Like, is there some other aspects of space holding and facilitation that you put in your maps or themes or things? And then we could also, that would help us to, in this call, to look at what other aspects would be there. Does anyone have some topics there you would like to look at, or what you feel that is important in your own mapping under the theme of facilitation and space holding? That would be good to look at. You can also write in the chat or say. Clothing. That's interesting. Are we going to be naked or having clothes on, or what's our way of yeah, for sure. That's also very individual. Musical
like also
instrument.
kind of clothing, wearing attributes, also kind of clothes you wear can set a kind of expectance maybe, or a vibe, a tone, maybe some mystery or not. Yeah.
So kind of clothing, appearance, or what?
Yeah, exactly. Appearance in the broad sense. Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah.
Nice. Basketball, like musical instruments. I'll put it in my sound map. Or is there something else? Visual entrainment. What do they call that? So that would be, is it more like lights or color and lighting? Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, that's actually really good. A visual entrainment. That's very, very professional word. Entrainment. Sound, color and lights. Yeah, maybe what I would also look at, like white painting. What do you mean by Mario white painting? Join my microphone now, then you can write in the chat. Aftercare. Also the way you prepare participants before arriving to the actual space. That's really good. So yeah, how do we introduce, like even how do we introduce the actual thing that is going to happen as part of facilitating already something? And aftercare, so it would be, just put some words in, or introduction, invitation, aftercare, integration, aftercare support, maybe. Support systems. And still, I'm not totally catching white paint. Wait. Permission to be weird. So that would be like the kind of psychological, that can go to many, like, how do we introduce it? How are we allowing ourselves to be weird or free already as the one who is inviting others to the space? So presence, permission, freedom, blah, permission. Any other? Boundaries. So yeah, that's a good one. So boundaries, and discussing them would be kind of like guidelines and rules, maybe also when it comes to the space. And is there any, and what does it mean? So it's part of also the talking introduction, boundaries, rules, guidelines. Is there any? If there's some in ourselves, in others, what does it mean? Breathwork and progressive relaxation before you start. So, as I thought, that would be like a how to say, preparation, or is there something that we should prepare people or ourselves, like, please eat only raw food, or don't do this, don't do that after, before? Do we need to prepare some techniques, tools? Techniques and tools, like kind of addings, even everything can be part of it. Okay. yeah, we can write to the chat some thoughts or things. Yeah, and the use of responsibility, contract or not, and why. That was came in the group space too. How do you call it in English? Liability, something, or not. So is there some other contracts, information? Okay. Waiver. Okay. So yeah, there's a lot of topics and mappings and themes here already. You can add if you feel, or share also. I open the sharing space. From here, I would a little bit look at role before we open dialogue and space, and also Johanna is sharing soon when she can give me a heads up. But yeah, that kind of it comes to the presence. Whatever we call ourselves, I would say, like whatever is our I'm a spaceholder, I'm a facilitator, I'm nothing, I'm just Ituli who is inviting you to the to this process with me. I'm co-journeying with you. So use of words also, like, who am I, what am I, why am I sharing this, why do I want to do this, will guide a lot the space, and it's part of how we introduce it. Do we come in as a teacher that now I have this topic and theme that I want to teach you guys about, and I want to share and tell what I know about it? Or so there's different roles inside of ourselves and in around us, obviously, and there's not a one word that we should use when we are inner dance facilitators, or when we are sharing this process or holding space for this process. So that's also something everyone can kind of feel in themselves what resonates. But some of the roles that could just look at it, because I think it's quite common to be in those different booths or roles during sessions, and when we hold trainings or immersions or weekend things, or when we share it. So one could be look at what is more like a teacher teacher role, where I might hold more that position, that I know a lot about something and I have this background and theory about it and knowledge, and now I want to share it to you, so I'm going to teach you something. If, for example, I want to pass on some skills, or I want to do facilitated trainings, or I want to teach about brain structure, I want to have a session with people that I will teach you guys about what I know and what maybe others know about this and this topic. So I kind of take the teacher boots in myself. When it comes to kind of the equality in the process and in the energy, if I come from a power or authority as a teacher, is very different than being a co-pilot or co-journeying or facilitator in the space. So it also, but it doesn't mean we can, there's also an aspect where we can switch roles, what we are holding in that moment, depending on also what's the purpose of the moment when we are sharing this with others. Then there's the facilitator. We can look at the word maybe from what I shared in the beginning. That's a one world from organizational culture, to look at a facilitator who enables information, decision-making processes to happen from a group space without being themselves involved with it. In inner dance, I would still differentiate that kind of way of talking about facilitator, because we are of course part of it also. Then there's something called coaching. So for example, if we are more having like a coach hat in us, and we have a one-on-one session, and we don't want to teach the person anything in that moment, or kind of coaching can be then like a tool for facilitation, to ask certain questions from that person about their process. I do it many times if people ask from me after one-on-one session, or in a moment like, okay, I felt like this, what do you think, Italy, this was? And I'm kind of careful to give any answers because I don't feel I have them. And I rather take the approach of like giving the question back to that person, like, so what do you think when you did feel that way? What do you think yourself? Why is that happening? And so many times the answer just comes and it's true to them in that moment, and it's more true than that I would have been analyzing the process with their father or movement in their hand. What's the meaning of it? So that could be kind of putting the coach hat on and coaching something and asking questions instead of giving answers to the person, asking questions from the group space instead of giving answers and truths out there. So then I will kind of have like a coach hat maybe more in the space. Then one role I see is mentoring. So when something, for example, I feel like Pi is a mentor in the space for many, because when someone is sharing from their long experience and life experience, knowledge, it's not saying you should do this way, or this is the only right way, or it's like I'm teaching this. It's more coming from mentoring space where we can be in resonance and reflect and learn from experience. So mentoring is usually seen as like a long background of something, and then we can mentor from that space where others life experiences or facilitation experiences or holding group experiences are valuable in the space, and we can learn from that. But it doesn't mean we need to do the same way, but we could have kind of like a mentoring mentoring hat or role in the space and say, based on my experience or based on my own journey, based on what I experienced when I was going through this is what happened, and that could mentor someone else to look at the same topic. So that can be like a one role. Then there's for sure a therapist role. When I used to do more body therapy work, and then I did one-on-one sessions, and I still work with the body a lot, and someone had some condition or thing, and then it's like, can you fix this? I have a knee problem. Does this process help my knee problem? So if I would come from my body therapy studies and background and be the therapist role in that moment, I would try to fix problems and fix conditions in a way, help them out, support. So I would already like be in this caring, caretaker, therapist kind of identity or energy. And being like therapy and coaching, these are all linked, and how can we see it? And then healer in the spiritual world is for sure, or also like energetic world, then healing and healer role can be one where we do witness and healing happens, but where some might take like healing comes through the one who invited me to come here, or she's a healer, he's a healer, because I actually feel I'm healed because that person touched me or said this thing to me, or I went into this deep process and I experienced healing happening. So when it is for sure a dialogue and a dance and a resonance between two people being in the space, and a collective process, also a healing process. But how do we, if we have a healer hat on when we conduct things, again looking at like kind of the characteristics there, and the intentions maybe, and how do we introduce our role in the space. Then one role for me, actually what I kind of love myself a lot and I use a lot, like being a co-journeying with people, being in research. So what words I myself, I'm kind of playing with them, like what kind of words I can use about my role of being in this space, which brings about what is for me right now, just from my personal perspective, what is inner dance, space holding, and facilitation for me, which has shifted a lot from like authority and role, even role and authority are stages of being a facilitator, more to we are facilitating this space together. I'm co-journeying with you. I'm going into research with you right now in the study space. So what is my role then in words where I feel myself liking to equalize the space, where responsibility is in all, it's in me and it's in the person who is going to the journey. But in other words, I'm also facilitating in that moment. But if I then say aloud, I'm actually co-journeying with you, I'm inner dancing with you, I'm as much in the process than you are, but just from having maybe different hats and moments and roles here in the space. So these are some things that can be interesting to look at, what are the moments, and they can be changing and shifting depending on what we are actually offering and what's happening in a group space or individual space. Do we feel like, okay, now I do want to tell that person this teaching about it, this theory about this thing, and then I'm more like a teacher, but now I actually want to ask that person what's the knowledge inside of them. So I'm more like a coaching. Oh, now I'm actually just sharing in an equal space, or going into the process with the person where we are just co-journeying, or now I'm facilitating, or now I'm coming from a therapy point of view. These are just some, but I felt for myself it's been very beneficial to look at those, because they're quite typical in myself to also kind of, because I'm coming from many different roles and historicities. And then inner dance space is very it's like an open free playground, so we can kind of discover ourselves too there. So what are the roles, and what is the game happening in the room, and what is our role, and how are we affecting and being affected in the space. Yeah, I think those are my mappings, what I managed to kind of look at different aspects. From my point of view, our aim would be to kind of structure our own space holding, structure our own facilitation, and part of that is just to start to know ourselves and our ways of being in that shared space. And if we are very new to it, it can be for some people very easy and natural right away. Of course, for some people it's super scary, especially when we do not have that manual, or we kind of are responsible of our own knowledge and capacity when it comes to space holding, and only us can know when we are ready and when we feel ready and called to it. Because in this, I feel like this type of process and energy work, they cannot be anyone outside of ourselves qualifying us to share with others, being anything. Now we can look at our kids, our family, groups, anyone in our workplace, who is the one who would say you are ready to hold space for your own child in this way, which is more maybe coming from the inner dance perspective, or then invite people in a group space to do it. So it is trust process and remembrance process first and foremost, and through that and looking at it, we'll learn for sure, and then we feel and learn and feel and learn when we are ready and when we want to. So, and not everyone, not all of us, not everyone in the group space definitely don't even want to facilitate or hold space for others. So this really is totally allowed to be our own space. So then we can look at these themes and roles. Even how do I hold space for myself, and how do I facilitate myself, and how would these mappings that, how do I use my own roles to myself, how are they beneficial for me to kind of start looking at that world. So it doesn't mean now, when we're also talking, that this is any aim that all of us have to start holding workshops or sessions. Our very core point is that inner dance is beyond those spiritual workshopping world, which doesn't cancel out how important it is to also create those spaces for others, if that feels good for you. It feels very needed, it feels very relevant, but it's not, that's not the form only. So facilitation and space holding is looked at in a very, very wide aspect. I think, yeah, I would love to check in if, yeah, maybe we could take a small sharing or anything that comes from you guys, and then we can give Johanna sharing space to look at her journey with like more this theme-based, and anything she wants to share, but theme-based facilitation and holding space through the kind of knowledge and trainings and her insights of that, and also some themes that I was talking with Johanna would be amazing to look at. Is when it comes to facilitation, we did something in Finland that broke the rules and the role of facilitator. We started to do community sessions, which we decided that no one is a facilitator, or everyone can facilitate if they want. And we introduced people to come into the space with that intention, where actually the roles are totally free to be in the space. Someone can DJ, step in and play music if they want. They can lay down, they can facilitate. So we started to explore this some years ago, and Johanna was initiating that idea also in our community there. So those for Johanna as reminder points, that would be super interesting to hear. But yeah, maybe some voices, sharings or questions, insights of this talk themes, mappings, or anything if you guys have to add. You can unmute yourself. Yeah, Mariela.
Yeah, I can go, and then you guys can tell me if you feel like it's a good idea or not. What I've been doing is that I get people to dance first. Like I'll put music and I'll get them to dance, and like move around the space and feel free to do whatever they want to do, like in terms of dancing. However, and I put something that it doesn't have a rhythm, so they cannot like copy something they know. And as they're dancing, I constantly tell them, you know, like permission to move about the space, to be weird, to, you know, let yourself breathe, like whatever comes through in the moment, whatever feels right. And then after that, they sit down, they go through like a mini breathwork session. And it's constantly telling them to like let go of the day and let go of whatever they're bringing into the space so they can have like a fresh start once we go into the journey. The breath work is no more than 3 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes or something like that. It's very little. And then after that, I do a demo. And then after that, immediately we go into the journey. I do the questions at the end so that nobody has like any expectations. And I just do the demo to tell them if for whatever reason your body wants to move in a way that you're not used to, the demo is your permission to know that energy can move in different ways through people's bodies. And then whatever comes up for you, it's perfectly normal. I haven't had an issue. Oh, and I also give them face mask, or they bring their own. So they do everything with their eyes closed. I haven't had an issue of anybody invading anyone else's space. And that's it. So I don't know if there's any feedback around that, or if there's any way that it could be done better, or I don't know. Yeah, that's right.
Super. That's also related to Vasco's question about breathwork or breathing. So we could look at this together and from different perspectives as an umbrella or theme that is there and what can be there, but is there something needed before, and kind of what is our structure, and does there need to be like what is free and these things, because we all do it differently, and also what are the experiences and effects of if we do something before or we do this and that, and then we can balance that thing. We'll gather that in the basket. Anyone else?
For me, it's also interesting to look at this thing of doing a demo. It's nice that you mentioned it, Mariela, because it is actually, I had sometimes this feeling of actually not wanting to do any demo because I would feel that I would already like set up a frame with it, you know, like that I would give like a framework for how it, like for some, in some way, like it felt not, I felt like leaving it free without giving any example of how it should be. But on other moments, I always choose in the moment if I do it or not, because in other moments, like doing a demo also can give people permission, as you say, Mariela, to actually move free in the way that the body is wanting to, no? So for me, it's also an interesting question, the thing of the demo.
Super. We will collect and also look at the demo. It's also part of like, yeah, the structure of the space we are holding, and then kind of that pre things, do we need to do them or not? And then what are the kind of benefits, and what are actually also the things, what they might cause that are not so beneficial. And some of those Johanna can also like harvest and look at through, and we can hear through her experience and then go more into these. Is there anything else right now in this moment in your minds? Okay, we can brew if there's some other topics and questions, that then we know where to guide also our call later on. But yeah, I'll give space to Johanna to share, and she can do her mapping and sharing of this world of facilitation and space holding.
Hi everyone. Iituli, can you maybe give me like a bit more condensed, like, or shall I just start? Because I don't know.
Okay,
or there's a lot. So like,
there's
what would you like me to talk about?
So what we mapped out before, I would think those are kind of aspects that would, what would be a little bit new mapping is that to just widen before we narrow it down. So now we mapped out kind of a big map, but then bring the aspect, because from the kind of so-called normal sessions or or holding the energetical space, when you started to take in frameworks, themes in those living room sessions this year and before. So how what is that aspect moving, and or there's no like step by step, but even like now opening that world of facilitating themes and dialogues and sharing spaces and looking at frameworks and the knowledge part as a part of how do we go into space holding in that aspect. And then you did your first training where you mapped out kind of your knowledge and your brain of inner dance, and then space holding for kind of more from a training aspect. How was it, what happened? I think those are interesting, your personal insights and process with it. And then what was else? The community session, kind of birthing, and your own story, also your own story about how did you start to facilitate in a reflection. I can just share later quickly that mine came from needing a facilitation course and structure and manual and guidelines, and Johanna has a very opposite, very more intuitive and like remembrance trust space where she started. So that's also just as in one example would be interesting to hear. So those are interesting, and anything, yeah, of course, anything that comes up, what you heard by now and what you feel would be important from your experience. Yeah, go.
Oh, okay.
Start your mapping.
Well,
this is also a practice of your own mapping and library now.
Oh, okay. So yeah, again, hi everyone, and thank you for receiving me here in this space. Maybe I will start from the beginning and then go towards the evolvement of like how the space holding has evolved for me. And yeah, in where to start? So okay, when I was I really resonate with what Iituli says about kind of being a researcher in this space. For where I come to the space always is from my perspective and my perception of what is inner dance, and what am I holding for why as an intention, and like why would I hold space for someone or for myself or for the group, for my family, for my friends, or at my work or wherever. Like, what does it mean to hold space for me, and why is it's like the base question is, what is inner dance to me? And just compressed as an energy experience or energetic process, where do I relate with it a lot is I relate to processes that has happened within my life outside of the process. So when I come into an inner dance space, I actually recognize the energy working, for example, in transformational events in my life, like my childbirth, that something is moving, or like even before being pregnant, the journey for like mentally wanting to become a parent and wanting a child and not kind of succeeding with it, and like how does that start working in my body and my mind, and unstructuring kind of the complete, like there is this something that's vibrationally like, or some energy that is combining everything and then initiating something to happen. And so the energy could work through my kids, that they could trigger something in me, or it could happen anywhere, and it could trigger it. It could be like, it could work in any layer of being, and then I would apply that to my research of what is inner dance and what is it that is moving me, and my perception, or what is causing the transformation. And yesterday we were talking about when all in all I was doing my mapping for the training that Italy said. I would just jump there, and I was going through 3 words. And if we say we're holding space for the energy process, and that would be either anything, if it was for what's where do you relate with your own experience with the energy, if it's relaxing or unwinding, or it's transformational, or it's healing, or whichever aspect of kind of it's called transformation. And then that could be started with something where information, like I divided in 3 words: information, transformation, and reformation. So that there is some sort of information coming somewhere to me that is kind of triggering my internal formation. That's why I kind of like the word, because it's internally forming something for me, and then it's causing a transforming. And somehow the outer and the internal of my being is some sort of, the vibration is affecting, so that I'm able to reform. So it could be any layer, like it could be really subtle in a session or in my own experience, like it could be just nothing happened, or it could be something really, really like what we would say transformational in life, or spirituality, in spiritual way, or however. And that would all combine to me in a way where the energy itself is the space holder, and the energy is like allowing allowing the space to become, or the people inside the space, or myself to become in a vibrational form, so that everything that I experience, or I see, or I perceive turns into vibration, that I actually become part of the playlist that is happening. And when Ituli was talking about the roles, that there are the roles, there's always my mind, there's always the vibrational form, and the mind is kind of part of the vibrational form. And it could be like how all these roles are appearing in the group or the circle of people in the space. It could be that. But all in all, I always have experienced that I lose my kind of identity. Of course, I know I'm there. I know who I am and what is the time. But at the same time, I don't know. I become detached from time, and I start interpreting the layers of what I see and perceive as a person, but I start to interpret them from the vibrational form, and in that way I feel that I become part of the space, and the space becomes part of me through kind of, and then somehow we create and become part of the playlist that is a tool of facilitation. So as a facilitator, I think I am holding space mostly. Like what's really interesting, and what Ituli also said, is like when we lie down in our own home and we don't need anyone else, we might have the sound or we might not, and then we can go in, or it's just spontaneously happening, and there's no one actually facilitating. So, but that when I am holding space for myself, if I would be holding space for someone else, it would be holding space for someone else to hold space for themselves. So that I would not take kind of I would not be the one affecting, I would not be the one doing, I would not be kind of taking the power away, but I would like to offer the space for the power to emerge from that space itself, or the people inside. And yes, as an observer, and to go into the sessions and somehow along holding space for people, well, it emerged in myself in a way how I explained. When I entered an inner dance space, I felt a relation to the energy and how it works, and how does it appear in other occasions in my life, or has appeared, and has it already given me the opportunity to allow the transformation to happen, if I did or did not allow it. So going into this space where as a Finnish person, the most effective thing that we've always brought in is the trust and the allowance of anything to happen without any guidelines, and something that supports the security and the trust within the freedom has been, it might not work everywhere, but in Finland it works, where we've learned to be really structured outside, and we've learned that we have rules, and we know, like when we go to a yoga practice, there is a teacher who says like what to do and how to do and what's the order to reach something. So in this space, what I found the most like supportive is that there is full freedom, but it comes with like full responsibility. So that also combines in in the way I see that I'm holding space for you, but I'm also offering you to the full freedom to be here. And I'm also offering you the full responsibility for being there. And I will be fully responsible for myself and fully free within this space. So that's like some sort of a dialogue that comes from like what Italy was saying, from opening and how to open and what's the invitation for the space. And how did I start? Was with Italy for the reason that for some everything has a meaning. We've walked along since we were 9 years old, and our kind of journeys into growth and the research of life and spirituality or consciousness or like self-healing and supporting our spaces have gone in different directions, but coming along each other in the same direction or meeting in each other always. So she invited me after some time when I had been going to the sessions here in Finland, and there was a festival, and I think prior to the festival I can't really remember if we already had started the online training or kind of an online study group, not a training but study group with Pi and the like a global community to kind of research. Like I remember it was called Deep Story, and it was for kind of studying consciousness and the evolution of consciousness. So I jumped into that because it was really inviting. I didn't know much about inner dance. I hadn't done just some sessions during a couple of years. I had a little child that time, and another or two, one or two, and then she invited me to the festival to co-facilitate with her and with a bunch of people. And yeah, there was Ahilan, for example, from the groups, and in the same place. And I remember I felt like, of course I come to co-facilitate for sure. I had already planned, or I already had a calling, that because motherhood and growing up as a parent, or feeling how the energy is actually moving me through the birth and theme of death as well. So I wanted to hold space for inner mama, and I wanted to, like, I already had the urge to kind of growing inside of me, not for that I want to hold space, but for something that there's something that comes through me and I want to hold. And there, when I went there, that was my first time to co-facilitate, and I remember asking her that is like one day prior or the same day, like, actually, do I have to know anything? That would it be beneficial that I know anything? And then she's like, well, do you have any questions? And I remember I said, not really. And then she's like, well, then you don't have to know anything. Just go in the space, trust your intuition. And like, if you don't know what to do, then just look around. And I think there were 7 facilitators, or 6 or 7 of us in this process. So yeah, and it was really, really how it went. And from the beginning, it was not much different to enter the space, like I said, from changing the position from a participant to a facilitator. And also, yeah. So it came naturally, and for that maybe I also present it like that, that I feel that I become part of the space and I become in a vibrational form when I enter it. So there is no me and my agenda or my will to affect it, but my will of researching and to kind of in an interplay or in as an equal participant, that if we say it's fully free and within full freedom and full responsibility, and if we say there is nothing you have to know about this, you just lie down and let anything happen. So from the facilitator's point of view, the same thing, that there is nothing that I should do or I should affect to, but it's there, and it's all kind of correct, that what is coming through. So I'm completely aware, but I'm completely immersed in the space. And yeah, as a continuity, the community sessions were born after quite fast after this, that we raised an interest to hold space. We wanted to offer an open space, actually kind of step out of the form of having a workshop where there is this kind of facilitators, and then they're holding space for some people to come to lie to. But when there were more people coming in the sessions, that we are creating a community and community space where everyone could come easily without roles, and with the interest of studying like how the space works. So we opened up a community space, and it meant for us that, of course, we still were looking into like what's the role of a facilitator in a way when there's someone who needs to book the space. We don't have none of us had a home that we could share, so we had to book a space, we had to do the invitations, and we here you need some money actually to rent the space. It's not cheap. So there's some sort of organizational and like things that need to be facilitated to the session to happen. But then we allowed in the session the research be more open for in the circle when we came in the space and do the check-in, so that people are allowed to play around within the roles, or go into the process, come out if they feel like it, and go around in the room and study like what is the facilitation. And also for the Spaceholder, if there is someone who is interested in creating the music, or someone who wants to try it out, or someone who wants to co-facilitate to learn how to do that, or just sit around and see what's happening. And so we created this space for that, and it was a really good way to learn the opportunities of expanding and like stepping out of some pattern that was there for the insecurities in the beginning. Of course, they were like, oh, this is not the same space, it's not feeling the same, the people are always different. It's not like, of course, in the beginning there were a lot of, from my side, there were a lot of insecurities. So these type of sessions that were even more liberate, even more free, that there were no structures that needed to be held, and it could be planned on spot as well, how the sharing circle in the beginning could be, and how could we finish, and like how would the dialogue parts emerge in it. And so already there we booked enough time to be able to also hold the dialogues in or after the sessions. And yeah, holding space after that, it in me it continued along the way all the time, the study elements of what is inner dance, what is happening, and what are the structures that are shifting, and what are the perceptions, and like what are the contact points with the energy and its movements in my life. So, or my perception to life, or my perception to that was shifting along the process with how I see the world, my my paradigm would shift, or my time perception, or my relationship with death of my close family. Like there was a lot of darkness around me, but there was also a lot of light. So there was birth and death present, and how this was actually like the energy was facilitating me through that in a way in my concrete life along. So I was interested in studying that all the time, and I went to Maya also for some time. There was a lot of movements in my life, and spent there 3 months and with my kids, and when coming home it was more clear for me that the space itself it builds and structures within the chaos in so many layers that there are interesting topics, and also kind of how can I support with the space holding my own intentions of studying the rhythms and the consciousness through the earth, and how can I bring it in the space in a way that I personally lost interest in my personal story and the storytelling, and going after emotional experiences, or after repeating the story after itself. So in a way there were questions that were expanding, and expanding my perception also, that then naturally came in mixed with my intention. Why would I hold space? Why would I hold space for myself, and how could I support my restructuring process and reformational process after the transformation? So that I would want to bring in the group session space as well, with the playlist, but with themes that I would bring in, and also for my ability to map out and integrate slowly became part of it, in a way that when I found an integrational part in outside the workshop, it would come in to the session, where I would have a theme either rising before the session, there would be a theme of darkness and light, or there could be a theme of time perception, or what is sound in general. And I could relate those themes first to how the research and the experiences through life have emerged within me, and how do I relate to them with the studies that I've learned. And then this would be brought into the dialogue space, or the initiation of the energy process before a group space, so that it would kind of bring in some sort of insight maybe that was coming through, or then some sort of question rising, like what could be held or what could be studied in there in some way. And what does it mean to empower also, for example, within the time perception, or when looking into your darkness and light, like what does it actually mean when you go beyond and go into the earth, circulating all the time, when there is actually lightness and darkness present all the time. So there would be some things that I would relate to kind of extend the way to look at things, and as my own perception was wandering around, and then bringing those themes back into the sessions, also to hold some sort of a framework and or directionality towards some sort of a framework that supports the process and the integration of the experience, or the integration of the transformation that had happened.
A practical question: how did you do it in practice? Like going from offering experience and like session to look at, okay, let's look at the theme time. What would be, were there shifts in people or the space? What did you experience? What was the difference when bringing themes and frameworks to the actual sessions? But what did you talk about it, or how would you? What was the kind of physical thing that?
Yeah. I would bring either the landing into this was more abstract, that there was just the slot of time and maybe some initiative name for the session, that it would be resonance or deep resonance or sound, or then it would also hold a question of what is sound or what is inner dance, and then that could be the title of the session, and it would also be in the description that there is some sort of dialogue allowed in the space. And I would have something that I would hold, that I would talk about in the beginning, perhaps. Mostly it happened in the beginning in the circle, when I would first do the check-in, and then I would talk about something that is coming through, and then maybe people are joining the dialogue after that. Or then if I would also be flexible about the space, how it becomes when I know who is there, actually, that if I had held an intention to talk about something, if it shifts in some ways, I would hold an opportunity for that as well. Or then I could bring in first like the sound, and then have the dialogue after the session, after the sharing, after the session. And that would be kind of when somebody said about the demo, I haven't done demos many times in the sessions because for me, more important demo or more important vibrational form has been the integrational part, which would come through offering a piece of kind of like talking and holding the opportunity for the dialogue, for the words to structure the space as well. Maybe Fanny has something to say to this for her study with the words, how they actually hold the space as well. So it's kind of already starting if the talk is in the beginning, it starts the playlist. It starts to flow, the energy starts to flow through, and it starts to interpret and listen the space, like what is there to be spoken about and how does it resonate back from everyone who is in the space. And later on, when I wanted to be mapping out more that what is actually there, more concretely, like the themes that you've gone through in the intensive, for example. So I started a living room session outside of kind of the regular sessions that I would name. It's in my living room, and I would name it already a kind of a study space where I say I will bring in what is called to be brought in by the community itself, or then I can bring in something that I'm interested in to map out myself. And I noticed that, for example, the time perception, like there are so many ways to look at how and what is time perception, and what does time, how in many viewpoints you can look at it. So there it was the point of the community space and the living room space was also for myself to do the study that I invite people who are interested to co-learn, to study together, and then I would map out everything that resonates and is coming through in when initiating the space. There's something that is speaking through. And then when I hear people who are joining in, there's something that is speaking through. And then I'm doing my study, that how can I bring in all the aspects that I know and all the aspects that are supporting or a framework for inner dance process, and how does the energy process shift time, or how does the perception form within multiple ways to look at time. And then I would bring the theme there. And then we could also just talk coming in the space, like just to start with what comes up and how do people respond to this theme. Other themes that I've held in that is sound and playlist itself, like a sound vibration, and then dreams or the wakeful dream, like inner dance sometimes is described, or the process is described. So and what would I see that shifts in people is that they journey, and they hold the questions in some ways, in their own ways, but they are also somehow able, it's not always related to the theme, but it's supportive in my experience to the integrational point of view, where there is something that you can relate the experience to, and then there is the verbal form facilitating the space in its many layers, where the frames are words. So somehow the structure of the words are mapping the space before and after. I don't know how to describe more, like what would the people, or how would they respond? Yeah.
That's something to bridge into what's been happening in the group space, when I don't know, sure, was it our Wednesday group or Thursday group, but I think it was the Wednesday group, where Yella was asking, like, okay, who, or many of us also been asking privately, like, I have a friend, they want to learn, who is offering trainings, or how can they get information? So kind of to, when listening Johanna's process and knowing it, like, how do we, what's that co-research space? So actually we are already in this 3 months and beyond, whatever we are learning, and it's our own study process. There's a really, really big gift and turning point when we also start bringing in, for example, for now, of course, many, it can be just to offer the experience, but also can be that some of us will want to start offering already kind of the knowledge or the themes or our own learning process together with other people. So instead of just giving the experience to people, there can be also a way to start looking at the theories. So because there is not a formal training format in inner dance, and when we are now mapping out our own knowledge, our own learning process, and our own journey to either in just to offer this to ourselves. Some of us have already said, like, I'm here for my own journey, my own study, my own understanding of my own transformation or processes within. Some of us want to offer this to others. Some of us want to help out people around us, different motivations and intentions. But in any of those cases, what would be also already to see that, oh, I can actually offer the knowledge part and the frameworks and my own insights and my study process to others. Just to put it out there, that what Piles answered in the group, that actually there is so much knowledge in ourselves and what you're already studying and looking at. And the process of translating that to others is, for me, was one of the most scariest and terrible. After 4 years, I was like, because people were asking in Finland, like, okay, how can I learn this? And our style was a little bit like what Johanna told, like throwing people into the fire partly, but with care, and like, okay, if you want to come and co-facilitate, come, or even inviting someone, like you being into the sessions many times, what about? And if that person gives signs like you want to hold space, our way of kind of learning and creating also a community, because I've never been into this to myself or doing this alone. And even now, when I was bouncing with Johanna some of these topics and ideas, I was like, can you come to the call? So can we hold this together to look at it? Because it's like already coming another perception to it. And that's been the most helpful learning process for me, that there's a mirroring process, and that can only happen with other people. So to create even a community from zero, because there was no one in Finland doing this when I entered inner dance, and I was feeling so alone. So I got stuck not doing anything for a year or two, because I didn't just myself have the courage to invite people. So my starting point was to find a girl who was in the Philippines who had the playlist and had kind of courage of the playlist, and I had the courage of holding space or invite people in a circle. And only when we went to have a cup of tea in Helsinki and decided, okay, let's do one session, let's see if we can do this together. We were super insecure, but we had a one like thing that each of us felt comfortable with, and when we brought that together, we were actually able to offer it outside. So for some of us, can be so natural and easy just to do it alone, but for me, it's been important to learn from others all the time and do it together. So then our way was just to open the space. You want to co-facilitate, and that's a learning process, and that's the way our kind of community started. And then people could feel very natural to come in when they feel like it. And then the shift was from co-facilitation and facilitation to go into the community session idea, which also broke then all the rules that we had been building for 4 years. And then I would say now if I'm just reflecting, this movement in Finland is like bringing in actual theory and topics and knowledge also in relations to these global networks and study processes. But any one of us can start from any aspects or some other aspects. How do we want to go facilitate or hold space? If we are alone, someone wants to do online something, someone wants to do physically, someone wants to do together. So I would maybe jump into some of the questions or even like practicalities, and then we could go back to the sharings. We're in a kind of 2-hour mark to maybe ground some, because I know many of us have like really practical questions, and some came out already. So the things that came now was that maybe like to look at first, and then we can go wherever. But that like, do I want to offer something before the actual inner dance experience and journey in the sessions, or kind of the structuring of the things? And through, for example, Johanna's example, her structuring of bringing a theme into the space can be before, can be actually coming also during the session, or can come after the session. There's no right or wrong way, and there's kind of that freedom space to decide and be on the flow and go. When it comes to what Mariela was sharing, like having a her structure, this is how I do it. Then as many us are offering this kind of processes, we have our own ways. I could look at the benefits and like, for example, the demo is very interesting topic, and I'm sure we will talk about it more later on too. But I would say there's 2 aspects of it, and it all starts from like from freedom space. Like everything is allowed, everything will have a meaning in the space, however we hold the space or facilitate it. We learn from everything. There is not a thing that is right or wrong. At the same time, we can observe the effects of the things we're doing at that moment. It doesn't mean it's going to be the same next time we do it. So it's the same with the self journey. You use the same playlist once, you have this and this experience. Next time you use the same playlist, it's totally different. So in that free space, we cannot know what is the outcome of things we decide to do. So for example, a demo can open up the space. It can already activate the group space. So if I open up the space with the demo and a person goes into like its energetic experience and journey, and then I ask the person to share, it kind of opens and activates something in the space for others, where they are inner dancing already by witnessing the demo. The demo is speaking usually to the room, because it's very public, it's very witnessed in a circle. There is so many eyes looking at you. So the person who lays down is very, very nervous. The heartbeat is like so super fast. At the same time they lay down, and we start very fast. You can actually create the conditions where the process starts, because it's kind of accelerated. Like it's very speed up moment, because not like normally other people would be laying down eyes closed or yourself only, but now you are witness like kind of an audience, so your nervous system would be like kicking in very fight and flight, like, ooh, everyone is watching me. So then at the same time we do ask them to lay down. We might use sounds, we might not, we might touch, we might not, but we calm the body down already by lying down. So I kind of haven't seen any demo in my time that wouldn't so-called work. And when that example comes in the beginning of the session where something works already, it's already like proof for people of the process and the things flowing through, and the witnessing parts are also part of the process. And when the person shares, many times there's something that is actually very collective, so people already feel moved by it. If I watch a demo and the person cry, I might feel the feelings already, I might already process my crying, or the person screams or goes to deep silence. I can already feel it because I'm in the space witnessing. So it's already starting and moving something in me. So that I would say can be the benefits of doing it in the beginning. Then the non-beneficial part can be that we actually give already a model, which is only one person's experience. And if we have very many new people in the room, they might think, oh, that's kind of what kind of the Instagram world is also doing. It gives an example how it could look like or be like. Demo can kind of affect the same way. Oh, it looks like that person is going in that way. So when after 10-15 minutes I lay down and I'm not actually doing the same, is there something wrong with me? Or this doesn't work? What's happening? Or I might get really scared by witnessing something. If the demo is very like intense, I might get scared, and it might like kind of block something in me. But then it's again about how do we open the space and how do we introduce the demo? Do we already say this can happen, or let it be what it is, and then go through it, that these things might come up in the space. So there's no right and wrong way to structure it. Giving a demo or not can be very beneficial, and some other occasions. So in that moment, myself, I would just read the room. I hardly ever did it, but then when I did it, I could also see how beneficial it is. And especially trainings, we do it when we did like a face-to-face physical trainings as a learning system, that okay, now we are going to study this body, this energetic system in this body together. We're going to observe it, we are part of it, we are all facilitating it, we are going into demos. So in a training setup or immersion, definitely we've done it and we're doing it a lot. But in a one session, I would kind of myself be like aware and listen in the space, and either do it if I feel or not. But it's not any structure that is brought in the space that this is how it's supposed to be done, that you always need to do it or things like that. So structuring our own offerings, we can copy from others, imitate how others are doing. We can take in themes, for example. Now we heard one experience, an example, bringing the frameworks, the study aspect to it, structuring it. So then the question that was out there was about, do we need breath work or dance or activations or relaxations, or do we need equipment even in the space to create it? And I think there's kind of in the dialogues that's been happening in the study spaces and in the community and facilitated, there's like two things relevant at the same time. There's relevance to to have an experience of just going into the process from whatever state our body is at. Meaning, if I come from work, I go into a session or I'm offered the space to journey, I will experience how hard is it to surrender. I will experience how busy my mind is. I will experience maybe how much hecticity there is in me. I will experience how my breath starts to move by laying down. So that would be a moment where I wouldn't give any preparations, that the person can actually learn about their own system. They can actually learn what is their own way when they lay down and start to slowly dive in without fixing anything in them in advance, without them needing to be in any condition to be able to journey into their own process. That would be the benefit of it for me, giving kind of a pure inner dance experience, which means whatever is in their field is their inner dance. And then another aspect to it is like, oh, in a hectic city life, when people come from the office, they're all in their heads, they're all stressed out. Oh, I've noticed the movement helps them to relax a little bit, release something, shake things off, breathe a little bit, and then they're able to go into the space. So this would be just like maybe explore, decide what are your own tools. If you want to add something, if you if you want to prepare people in some way, if you want to give an introductory of something, you don't even want to say anything and you just want to push the play button and see what happens. It's really up to us. There is pros and cons to everything depending on the situation. This would be kind of my 5 cents to look at those questions, and would be amazing to hear your voices and sharings, maybe from this or bridging or anything that came. We've opened like a bank of world of things to look at. So maybe opening a space for that to flow into any topics or questions or sharings, inputs in any of these. I mute myself. So anyone can unmute themselves.
I could continue if there's no like adding of the questions. I feel like my head is everywhere. It's such a rich topic, and it holds a lot of actually personal processes to start looking into, like having your own style in a way of facilitating, and what does it mean and how does it work for me personally. I was really coming from an intuitive space, but then I had my logical mind who wanted to have a structure or to understand, but okay, how, like what do I do first, like what does it mean? And then I somehow could never go that way, because it not that it doesn't work, but that there was something like not allowing me to go into the structure. So to hold, let's say, a session for me is really to feel the space, and I had to learn what does it mean to listen to a space, and what does it mean to create a dialogue. And a dialogue is happening when we listen not just to the words that are being spoken in the space, but also what the energy is, how it's being held. So sometimes we can feel that some people are in fear, or some people are insecure, or some people are in their head. And so how do we speak to this without also directly pointing things out, because you can speak at large in a whole to the whole to everyone, and then it becomes like a conversation that the space is actually speaking through you to itself. And this is the dance that starts already. So I like to start with a check-in to see where people are at, and to just come in the space and meet as humans, like who they are and what they are. It also depends when sometimes in the sessions people really know inner dance, so then we don't need to address certain questions, because sometimes when there's a lot of new people, there's kind of, I feel like, an introduction to inner dance that can be open, like, oh, inner dance is this. Or I ask then some people that experienced inner dance before to share what is their experience. So then it comes from also the whole everyone, and then I'm not actually the one telling them what it is. So it really comes from other people, like sharing, oh, I experienced this. For me, whatever is their actually experience, because for me inner dance is kind of like a process of everything. So I think one important thing to hold is a process of trust. So to be aware of the words that we use, that are and what they hold, and how much they're going to induce trust or fear, or like, I don't want to say a guidance, but like a, yeah, like a facilitation, or yeah, like confusion in the space. And through this, sometimes with the check-in and how I feel the space, like, okay, there's like half the people that are new, they don't know what it is, and they know from a friend, or some people just came to the workshop right away. So it's like Italy shared, it's really like, okay, do I do a demo or not? And then sometimes it's really opening the space, and sometimes some people go into fear because they see like you can have a demo, and then which is super interesting also to experience as a facilitator, because you can have a demo where the person doesn't move at all, and then you can have your own process of like, okay, what is happening, is it working or not? But you know it's always working. But then, you know, like I had so many times like, and why do I do a demo? Is it because I want to show something? Like, am I waiting for the movement to happen so I can show that, oh, something is happening? So this was like a very big process for me to look into. And then some people, you bring the body into a demo, and they go really kind of like epileptic, and a lot of movement, and or they cry, or they yell, and then it's very like intensely emotional. And then some people can go into like I had a person last summer that was like, I'm sorry, but this is epilepsy, like what is happening? And then, okay, how, like this person is holding a fear, so how do I speak to it in a way that it's not going, the fear is not going to go in everyone around, and that I can really hold it in a way that I can allow the person also to, like, I don't give a direct answer, and I can allow the person to hold this process, because she is going into her own fear, she is going into like her own projection or something of something, or so I think for me was to, through understanding my own questions and to finding my own answers also, because I'm someone who like questions a lot and I'm very curious. So I was like, okay, but do I have the answer for this for myself? Like, what does it mean through my own experiences of laying down, of like experiencing all of this, and slowly also with um, holding dialogues and conversation with um, the the community, like, oh, what is about this, and hearing from others like their own experiences, and then bridging together, like connecting the dots about, okay, so this is something I feel comfortable to answer, and also to be honest sometimes, to be like, I don't have the answer for this, like I'm not holding a master, I'm not holding anything. So it's interesting if we can and look at this together, is to like, okay, thank you for bringing it in this space, let's see what comes up maybe after the session, or I'm going to bring this question back to the community, and like I'll come back to you. Like it's amazing, because then we share the research together, and we share the space holding, and it's like, it's also creating a space of equality with everyone, which is bringing like an openness, so people can really come with their own self, and what they're holding inside. And inner dance is coming from the sharings of the people. It's through the sharings and people bringing their own questioning that we understood slowly, like, oh, okay, why do people experience going back to the womb? Okay, what is this? And then that we questioned, and we explored and researched, and it's still happening all the time, like, oh, this is happening, and now we go into the children or the doctors or this or that. And so like it's super amazing to be able to hold like a student and teacher relationship within the space. And I think this for me allowed me to not feel I had to hold anything, or that, because I didn't feel comfortable necessarily to like just hold it and I have all the knowledge. And then so to allow myself to be like, hey, I'm as much studying this, like I do know things and I do experience something, and I like let's share together, let's explore together. And it removed this kind of hierarchy of the space holder, and it made me much more comfortable to not come from that space. And I think within also a session, it's always for me like a space of exploration, and it's like I feel it's an experimentation of like, it's like my body and your body is actually talking together, and we're holding a conversation. So what is speaking through you and what is speaking through me, actually you are speaking to yourself through me, and I am speaking to myself. So when I speak, even at the moment, I'm actually talking to myself. So this seeing of each other and seeing through, like if a person is holding a fear, it's also a fear that is being held in my body. So how can I speak and allow myself to open this vulnerable space, and to really um, be the medium where the energy is passing through, and see the other also as being a medium, and where I just allow like the facilitation to be held in that sense. And so when holding conservation, whoa, that's interesting, conservation and conversation, um, for me was to really observe the body as well, because when we learn, okay, there's like the breath is sometimes slowing down, sometimes is speeding up. So this was kind of indicator for me at the beginning to see where the people were at within the wave or the process, the journey. And then following the heartbeat was something that I could observe within the body, and I was observing like if the body is hot or if the body is cold while touching sometimes. So it was just like looking at what is the feedback that the body is telling me in the moment, and what is the feeling, like, you know, the intuitive touch that is coming, or what is it that I see in that moment that I can hold and that I can speak to also at the end, which is also holding, like the talk at the end is holding a process of, is the continuity of the integration, like the end of the music is bringing like an integration. But then when you come together in a space and then you share, and it's okay if to hold it also. I really allow people not to share as well without pushing it, because then people just stay silent, and then it's also a very interesting process when everyone is silent and then they don't share. And I thought maybe they didn't experience anything, and like it's a personal process. But yeah, so holding the part that what you observe in the space, and also some body like some people experience similar processes, and so sometimes you can see like someone moving a certain way, and then across the room you have a person doing exactly the same thing, and you're like, ah, okay. And just observing, just really being the observer of everything. And then sometimes it's related, sometimes not, and it's what it is. And related to the bodies, I think from my experience of holding different bodies in different cultures, sometimes it's needed, like if I hold a German body that is much more coming from control, and I understand the culture, and I see what is kind of like being held there compared to like bodies in Mexico when I was there. Like sometimes it was more like open, and it really depends like what was there. And so then like it allowed me to like speak to it differently, or it allowed me to, like, I never really did any dance or breath work, or some people do some shaking also. Like for me, it never resonated with me personally, but I held space with other people that were doing it. And I find it interesting to bring this also like as a support tool, or like just a tool by itself. So I think it can be like an approach to like ease up. And then yeah, it's a very interesting space to observe also, like what type of culture or body or space also, like where are you at, if you're in a festival where everyone is exploring and exploding, or if you are like in a very corporate like network, then it's very different. And I think one thing about the aftercare or the sharing at the end, it's still something related to trust. Like if you share at the end, like, oh, be careful, like how you drive, or make sure you ground yourself, or I don't know, things like this, then are you actually like telling the person that you know, be careful, or make sure, like well, how do you speak that will, like, you can say something similar, like ground yourself, but what, like in a way that is very supporting of like you, like everything is done, you're already integrated, just be aware of your dreams, or like if something comes up that you want to share later on, like we're here, just we're available, write to us or call us or anything, like to have this like sense of being held also after. And also I share sometimes that inner dance is not just the session. Inner dance, it already started when the person decided to go and the person entered the space and went into the space, and it's also happening in continuity afterwards. And sometimes like something that happens in a session can have like a ripple effect that is in time, like later on, and that brings like an understanding, could be like a week later, a few days later within dreams, or 6 months later, or and then it's not necessarily something that they would see or understand, but then yeah, it's like when it happens, this is when like you connect the dots backward, and then yeah, it's like a whole process of understanding and bridging together. Yeah, so these are things that came up for me to share. But it's amazing to like, there's so many answers, and there's like everything is allowed. And one thing also I want to share, the last immersion I held in Germany, the weekend we did 2 weekends together, and the topic of being weird and like epilepsy and aphasia and all of this came up, and we were already like 2 days in, and we had a session, and everyone was going crazy in the room, like totally like yelling, moving, like everything was super intense, and I was like, okay, this is happening. So sometimes just opening up a subject about something to allow the craziness to someone, allow the weirdness, allow this like just be a child that doesn't care about what other thing like, thinks, and just like allow this, and then the sharings are like, it's really cool, and then we came up with this like, yeah, we're just feeble-minded people, we're just crazy, and like, why not allow this to happen? And so like this process of allowance is always coming back to like, what do you allow, and how much structure or conditions do you create or not create? And sometimes it's needed, and sometimes it's like, so that's why it's always an exploration for me. There's never one session that is the same, and because it's always a co-creation with the people that are there, and you never know what is going to come up in the space. And I think that's what I like about it, because it's always new, it's always like refreshing, it's always something that we create more trust to be able to hold something that is like, okay, let's look into this. And so yeah, thank you, and let's open the space again.
We have Vasco's question in the chat. He's with the baby. So Vasco is asking about, based on his own experience, when he was in a process and the playlist and music ends, but he's not actually finished. And then how would we hold space for that in the end of the session? Would you hold more space? So this is all, I think, related time and space. If you are renting a room and you have 5 minutes, can you extend your time in for example, in a rental space? If it's in your home, you're sessioning with someone and the playlist ends and the person is still in the process and you have time, of course, you can hold the space and the process can continue. We have experiences worldwide, but especially in Maya, where time is not limited, people being in the process for days and nights and some years, so it never ends. Actually, it's not like time bound into 2 hours, or our structure, what the Spaceholder was holding is actually not the structure that the person lying down is holding. But probably people, from my experience, they do have a sense of time and space. What we shared in the group calls also, like if someone needs to go to the airport, they really just open their eyes and they're like, okay, now my taxi's there, 5 minutes, and you just see them like birching out their demons and traumas, and then it's a snap and they're fine because they know already there's a structure in them and they're not unconsciously doing or journeying or chancing out. There's the awake state that also holds a structure in us. So if we're in a group space, there is situations which is really interesting actually, and it can be very challenging also for the facilitator, where a person allows And now we are talking quite a lot about holding groups. We can maybe also focus on holding individuals later on, or even today still, or holding close family members or our partners and stuff, which is sometimes a very different story and sometimes it's the same. But now when we are in still in the group space holding topic, end of the session, even there's a perception that this session is ending. That's why we are bringing the music down. So we're giving signs in the space as a space holder already that, okay, we're going towards the end. And for some reason, and for many reasons, some people's processes doesn't stop, or intentionally they don't want to stop, and they actually want to shake even the rules in the space, and even some people might go really wild. So then the facilitation or the holding space continues for sure until everyone is out of the space and even beyond that. So how do we, how do we hold something that is not like majority of the people would have rules? We are ending, we have to stop, I will come down, I'll gather in a circle, and then one person might be jumping all over the space still. So how do we hold that in ourselves first and foremost, because how we react to it is usually a very linked to how that person who wants to continue or who is continuing the process also. And this I'm more relating to very wild kind of situations, and then where there's actually that audience, kind of like the demo situation, they know everyone else is coming down because we would sense that. And then we want to be seen, maybe we want to allow ourselves to continue, we want to break the rules. So sometimes these are happening too. So, and yeah, a few months ago in Spain we had this, we actually finished the whole training and someone then spiked up and went through the cosmos in their own process, and it brought a lot of questions in other participants about also boundaries. Like some people felt that person was rude because they took so much space from others when others were actually wanting to share and calm down. Some people were fascinated that someone is so free that they allow themselves to continue their process in a very wild way in front of everyone. And everyone is eyes opened already. So we brought it in a dialogue also to talk about it with those people who raised concerns about the situation. But also we just took it as part of it all. So not even trying to bring someone back or trying to put them sit in a circle and be a good boy or a good girl, how Pai always says. It's like, be quiet, stop your process, come to the circle. This is the rule, because there's something actually in their inner dance where they are like, I need to break this now, I need to break this now, I need to get embarrassed and shamed and whatever, but I need to do it. So yeah, those situations happens. What Vasco is asking is like, is there a time and space beyond the playlist ending? For sure, if we are able to provide that, for sure. And also where people still continue the process when they go home. I don't think we need to stop anyone of processing anything or coming back to this or come back to normal or these kind of things what Fanny was sharing, like, oh, now you need to ground, now you need to do this. How can I know that it's actually like, what about that person is supposed to stay somewhere for a while or go home and continue processing the things, and that can be very meaningful for them and meant to be. So why would I decide on them? Of course, then again, if someone is going to drive a motorbike and I see that person is wobbly and shaking, I take care, as I would take care of anything in life and situations. So so there's no rules. So overall, I think many of the mappings that we were looking at, which is very annoying to hold the space for these topics and say, yes, you can do this, and yes, you don't have to do this. This is right. This is okay. There's no right and wrong. So coming kind of back yeah, I kind of like the librarian aspect, what we started with the playlist, that how can we create our own libraries, and could we look creating our own libraries when it comes to this theme of facilitation, our tools that we are using. How do we use this group space when we do have questions, and when we start to explore something and take that in as a learning process. Bouncing experiences, ideas, what we're doing, and sharing insecurities, fears, what happens in this space. So also relating the ending, what Fanny was saying about that if there is space for sharing, and we hear synchronicities and people witness those and they hear what others are sharing. So for example, if someone is having a very intense experience, even for ourselves, this is to any space holding, to group, individual, everyday life. If we hear after the experience, whatever is it, it can be a journey, inner dance, nothing happens, is there feedback? It can be seeing visions, it can be sounds that comes out of the person, or emotions or whatnot. When we first witness the experience, we usually formulate our own opinion or perception through our own lenses, what they might be going through or not. But when we actually hear their sharing or we talk to it, it might be something totally else that we thought it was. So crying might not be sadness, laughing might not be happiness in that person, it might have a totally different meaning. So that way, encouraging that as a learning process, the listening part, like how can we listen to anyone going through their process. And that's why also in our study journey, we give a lot of space for sharings, because that's part of the process of learning how to hold this space, is to listen others to, okay, that was your experience, or you went through that, and that was actually the meaning you put into it, or the insight, which might be something we don't, in our mind, we formulated something else. So, and after the session, or even they would share after 1 month, or some people share after years. Really, they share after 3 years. Oh, you remember I had this process or this session, and I never heard from that person ever since. And then after 3 years, you meet them or they contact you and they say what shifted, how it changed their life. And there can be huge things. And it's like, wow, one session actually made that person made those networks and connections. And so it is very good, amazing gift to listen and then to hear, and for in a group space to let people hear each other so they can make meanings. And if there's anything that was brought up, fear, brought up annoyance, brought up judgment, brought up anything in the space based on someone else's process, when they actually hear that person explaining about their process, it can shift also our preconception, what we thought or what opinions we formulated of other people's processes in this space. So sharing is really, really, really core, important aspect in I think for many of us who are offering the spaces. Let's see the chat. So Johanna is saying that the playlist could continue through speaking. Yeah. Response to oneself also. Yeah. And continue finishing in their own pace. Is there something else? Some other sounds and voices, words, questions, insights? We still have a sharing space for around 20 minutes if you want to continue. Something that raised questions, or some themes or mappings that were something you would want to hear more or talk about more or ask, share.
Maybe I could just quickly add to what I shared before for bringing in the themes or the frameworks, and in generally the dialogue space, that for me, what I've noticed, it holds an interpretation of the process in the body, and it kind of interprets the experience. So when it's spoken and when it's structured, and when it's spoken in again, and when you are sharing about the structures or the frameworks that you want to hold, and you want to kind of, or what is giving you value, and you resonate with, then going through that again by speaking maybe in your own language, even like in my case, it's been a big process to translate it from English to Finnish and then re-speak it out. And while mapping it first in a big bunch of things and then speaking it again, it's the same value as coming out of the process and then kind of sharing verbally. It vibrates and restructures again the information that came in to you or came out of you, and then you can relate to the themes that are there, that has been studied, and somehow what's the word? Yeah, somehow the speaking integrates and reforms the information in you, embodied. Yeah, this is what I wanted to say.
It can be anyone who wants to or has like a spark to start sharing with other people, holding space through themes and frameworks also. What was helpful for me that time when I did it in a one weekend, but I started with just two topics or three topics because it felt such an overwhelming amount of information. Maybe many of us can hold so much more already. But I started just looking at, like, I was like, okay, now I invite even people to the space because I want to learn this, and for some reason I want to test myself. Can I put this out? So I learned the wave, the sleep cycle wave, and the stages, and I draw it in a big paper in the wall, like very professional. And then it was 2 days so-called training, but like a weekend focusing on facilitation and some of the themes. So I looked at sleep cycles, I memorized brain waves and how the cycle goes, and kind of the awake REM states. And then I think, what did we talk about others? Maybe that was even it. So I took in, like, my first step was just to take in one theory, and I realized that I only learned it when I was actually kind of teaching it to others. But I shared it from the space where I shared that this is what I've learned, this is what I've understood, this is related to the process, and these are the themes and the theories, and let's look at it together, because there was like super kind of professionals already in the space who knew much more about dream states than I did, and they actually added information to what I was sharing. But I had to break my fear of sharing information also. Beyond that, I was very comfortable of sharing the actual experience, and then there was like a big jump to start sharing something about the frameworks and knowledge part. So yeah, it can start from very, very like a theme that Johanna said in the room, theme that comes in the space to check in with us. What do we remember? What do we know? What do we observe? Or actually just like learning a one theory and bringing that in. And I think most of the people who started to do this in the community are always sharing this is the way they actually were able to learn it themselves. To give it, pass it forward, give it freely forward, and that way it somehow we need to digest it inside of ourselves first and then speak it out. So it's a really, really good learning method. Is there something else that came from the mappings? The boundaries, rules, guidelines. Do we need them? And if we do feel we need them, maybe we need them in our personal space and space holding that time. And then there's no rules how I think those should be implemented. I think we all have to work from our own space first and foremost to feel comfortable. What I had as my core teaching in the beginning, that if I do feel that I need to do something or do an introductory, if I feel I need to prepare the space in a certain way, I did it because I felt that I need to do it. And then it always shifted and changed. And I realized by years sometimes like, oh, this is not actually necessary. And everything still works. So it's a learning process with waves of like, okay, I need to bring in this instrument. About instruments, musical instruments, they're amazing. I think if we look at practicing, starting to hold space as a playground, like being kids, bringing in that equal space, like, okay, we go into this research together, like a very curious childlike mind. And now we have this playground, this space, and we have time to explore it together. I'm facilitating this, so I'm creating conditions where we are allowed to go into this freedom with full responsibility, however you want to word yourself, like preparing yourself into the space. And now we go into this journey and research together. Musical instruments, smells, stones, objects, everything is kind of like tools and toys in the playground for me. And I very intuitively feel, and we've been watching more the music, so we don't need to go there. Of course, certain instruments are affecting certain waves, and we can create the waves and spaces with different sounds in different moments, and we can break all those rules and do something really random, which is always also, I think my first rule inside is that we don't need to be musicians. We don't actually really need to know too much what before, because we're also learning with the sounds in how to make sounds from ourselves with our voice, with speaking, with the instruments or our body sounds. Our body can be like clapping, clicking, doing sounds. Some people call like language, some people call baby talk. Any sounds we can kind of be part of the playlist. We can just explore, and then the more we hold bodies, the more we go into those processes ourselves. There starts to be kind of mapping that we can do, but it's really beneficial to combine the theory we are getting from the course and the information that comes from experience and long time conducting, and kind of starting from zero, from our own research. Okay, every time I do clicking with my tongue or with my fingers, or every time I touch, what happens? And it can vary. So yeah, musical instruments, from our start, I maybe had a drum, maybe something else, and then we went so fully into it. In I think 3-4 years, we couldn't do a workshop without the car because we had so many instruments with us. So it just like got a little bit out of hands. So we had to like carry all this stuff, and it got really like equipment heavy, with my co-facilitator that time in Finland. And we were laughing about it. Like we started so simple, and suddenly we have this car, and it takes 1 hour time to even carry this. We had 3 big djembes and this and that, because we got so into it. So whatever you feel inspired by or get into it, go for it. until it's not necessary anymore. So then in some point we're like, oh, it's really heavy, and then suddenly there's like a small electronic music device, and oh, that becomes interesting, and I only have to carry now this DJ app and my phone. So okay, no need for the carload of drums, and it's not possible. So whatever is kind of coming into our space, I would use those as tools, toys in the playground, explore them, not needing to be a professional and know how everything works, not needing to be an expert bodywork to be able to actually be in a connection with touch to people, not needing to be a singer to be able to bring out voice in the space or hum or any sound. And I think those are all our personal processes, what tools we feel comfortable to use, what aspects of ourselves we feel uncomfortable to use, but we could actually feel this is a space we can also explore those. Like my voice was very blocked. I felt I never want to sing, or I never could sing in front of anyone in my life. I was so like, no. And suddenly, after being resonating with something, maybe doing more sessions where Floor was always singing or someone was putting voice, in the next year I started suddenly like singing, which was like, why are you, oh my god, what are you doing, Italy? What's that? Why? Ugh. And I was like, oh, but it's coming out. So also allowing us to go into our inner dance when we are facilitating and using different aspects of ourselves as a learning process in this space, which it's not perfect, and it might like be scary to use our own body and mind and sound and voice as tools. Clothing appearance came up. That I think it's very personal to all of us, and also what we resonate with and how much anything we need on us. Hygiene is also quite a big topic, like smells. They smells being essential oils or incense or body smells are quite big in the room. So I think all of those we need to reflect through our like own system too. Like if there's a really strong smell of sweaty or something, like how does it feel if someone comes close to us? But also when that does happen in life, how do we react into it? So not saying this should be eliminated from the group space or anything, but but smells are really odors and pheromones and everything that is coming in those senses are a big facilitation tool for sure. Also can be a big trigger mechanism. What was else? Yeah, we talked about the techniques like preparation. Also, if it's needed and when it's needed, and doing how we feel. Yeah, I love this mapping. I think would be amazing to continue our own mappings and then share also when we start seeing things and learning things by doing and experiencing, combining the information and studies and with experiential learning. It's like amazing balance to go into if anyone and we feel called to it. And we still have 1 month time and beyond. So to use the group space, to the community and the peer support right now, that if I have a chance to go into facilitation and test out or break, or I'm a facilitator already, what about I break my own systems a little bit and try something else also as okay, maybe I could do this way and then share from that space. So super inviting anyone to share in the WhatsApp group space anything about these topics, questions, themes, if you need support in anything. Yeah, is there anything anyone wants to share with the closing feeling or vibes, or you can just like say anything you feel on
I have an invitation. I don't know if you hear me well because I connected you to the speaker, but if you don't, let me know.
It's good.
It's good. Perfect. Thank you. There was an observation like when everybody was sharing how they think, how they hold the space, which is the relationship to what leadership looks like, because it could be interpreted that a leader is a concept that tells other people how to do something, and there's not really a communication back and forth. And I can feel how there's a necessity to create a space where there's a communication, when there's a two-way communication back and forth. So the invitation would be to think about how can leadership be inspirational rather than like a dictatorship. Me coming from a communist country where there's a lot of like restriction, I quickly had to learn how to like overcome that restriction and learn to give myself voice and learn how to ask for things that before I just couldn't ask because it wasn't available for me to have. So it became a theme for me to give a lot of people the permission to ask, to be, to feel. And I noticed that in my story, it has been leadership to show the way, to give inspiration, to be that person that gets up first so that then everybody can get up after. Rather than a leadership that tells other people how to do things, it's more of creating a container where things can happen. So yeah, I just wanted to share that part that, you know, one concept can be seen in so many different ways that it's always fun to give it a second look.
That's amazing. And that's actually coming also to the role part and what Fanny brought as role of a student that was not in the list. For example, what I have that also, okay, we can be in the space with the role of a student. We can be also in the space with the role of a leadership. And like anything we feel, I think what is necessary in that moment, what is our own way of being in the space. There's no like this is the inner dance facilitator role that you should be in, and definitely in a community we need to take, and in life, in family systems too, we need to take different roles in a different time. So like an inspirational leadership role is amazing. Also, whatever we present to people in ourselves in any ways in our lives, we will all attract different type of people into our spaces. So if we would then encourage each other all to do this thing same way, but like kind of a monoculture instead of a biodiversity. So I would say those are like a core values for me, and I know for many in the inner dance community that there is allowed biodiversity, and that then needs to be allowed, that there's not a one way to do it. So all of us being inspirational leaders, showing our own way to do it, and then people can choose and go into different and get different role models and examples is really a gift. And taking different roles, going into total equality space, like for example the community session or no roles, and then in other points taking more leading roles, like all this is in this puzzle. So yeah, thank you for bringing that aspect of leadership. And none of them are like we should facilitate only and not lead things. If the point is not that we cancel out something, that the leadership is not valuable, but it's a really good point. Where is it coming from when we take the lead? What's our intention? And is it like putting down, or is it actually then creating also that equal space to process? Is there anyone else?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. You all of you shared it helped a lot today. As I mentioned before in the group, I feel a bit scared now to facilitate, although I feel like it. And your tip of Italy of doing it with someone together, actually time back when I did, that was a huge help. for me to do it with someone. So it was good to be reminded of that. And then the projection also, I think, when you see others go into the process and you think like this is happening, I see a lot of projection there going on. This is what they're going through, and this is what they're going through, and it helps so much to hear afterwards that it was like many times something completely different. And it's like what Fanny was speaking about, like to stay the observer, right? Also in that moment, like stay your own observer, like I'm projecting. But yeah, just to stay curious. And last thing, and I guess this has been for me the biggest lesson in general from whole inner dance, like there is no right or wrong. Even if in a session somebody would touch, for example, in a little bit of a rude way, and you'd be like, oh shit, I remember the first time when we did the 10 days in Lithuania, we were invited to facilitate, and everybody was standing like, oh, everybody was super scared and like touching like super softly, you know. And then in the end, like after a couple of days, everybody went just completely nuts. And I was like, there is not really a reason to be afraid, because you never know what something that will happen can cause for effect in the other, and then from the other to you again might be a learning point. So like there's not really a reason to be scared. And yeah, there's not really a right or wrong. So that's a huge so yeah, thank you all for all of this, everything. Yeah.
Thank you, Mick. That was perfect closing for these topics. Insights on bringing things together. So yeah, we can unmute our microphones to just have a casual sounds and bye-byes and thank yous.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.